Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow! I've got to hand it to you, Basil. You've done a great job of getting some pretty interesting guests on the show. Well, of course, you had, amongst others, you had Basil the cat from Sanford, Florida, who managed to live, well, not exactly, sort of simultaneously, but certainly in an overlapping fashion in both the Trayvon Martin's dad's household and the George Zimmerman household. And he had some pretty interesting stories to tell. What's that, Basil? Okay. Well, Basil wanted me occasionally to try to vocalize his actual sounds. As you remember, cat, which is Basil's native language, of course, has only two vocalized sounds. One being meow, and the other one being Are we running already? Oh my gosh. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. You got to get away from this, Basil. Okay, let me back up a little bit because I'm not sure exactly what the camera caught while we were off camera. Basil wants me to vocalize or attempt to vocalize in cat some of his utterances. So you folks in the audience can actually learn to speak cat. Now, as you recall, there are only two vocalized utterances in the cat language. One being meow, and the other one being and according to the way the cat inflexes its voice when it makes either of those two utterances can actually represent an amazing 932,817 different words, all according to how they make either of those two utterances. Did I do okay with that, Basil? Okay, Basil, I'm going to do this now. Basil said, meow. Oh, okay, now I've got to translate, I guess, for the audience because you haven't, learned the language yet. I'll say it again. Basil's saying that's very important to note, kids, that it's a very difficult language to learn, but living in a multilingual society like we have in America, it's probably a good idea. And in fact, there probably are more cats in America living under the roofs of humans than any individual segment of society. There's certainly more cats than there are in America than there are Irish descendants, English descendants, Ecuadorian descendants, Haitian descendants, Portuguese descendants, Greek descendants, Italian descendants. Certainly more cats than any of them. So Basil wants me to make that known and try to get you guys to maybe hustle up and learn a little something about the language of the cat in your household. How'd I do, Basil? Okay. Okay, he said, meow, meow, meow. Okay. And that translates out as essentially, yep, okay. And with that, we're on with our show. With us today, we have another cat. This is the cat that is the pet of Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. And Chief Justice Roberts is actually in Europe this week, And so his cat, Deadpan's his cat's name. Pardon me for not introducing you by name. His cat, Deadpan, was able to make it here to the show, to do a couple of shows with us, one tonight and one again Sunday morning. We do a little bit more religious themed show. And he's actually going to reveal to our audience, you're going to hear it first, right here on Basil BuddhaCat Presents, why John Roberts voted the way he did on the recent health care legislation. Very important bill. It's generically called Obamacare, but it's actually known as the Affordable Care Act. And it's designed to, amongst other things, ensure that many, many millions of more Americans are covered by health insurance. As the bill gradually comes into play, it's only partially come into play so far. One of the things that's come into play so far under the bill has been that kids are covered under their parents' health care up until the age of 26 if they haven't already moved out on their own and found a job. If they moved out and found a job, they're of course going to, possibly get through their own employer health care, but in the meantime, they're covered up until the age of 26, living in their parents' household, so they can get routine medical examinations. They can starting off on a good health foot, so to speak. Okay, now Basil, Deadpan, will he be able to translate through you and then you through me? Basil says, "Well." Wow. And that, Basil is saying, I guess so. Okay. First of all, we're going to try to take some call-ins if we have anybody calling in. And but mainly what we want to do is spend some time talking with Deadpan about the infamous or famous vote that Chief Justice John Roberts cast last week on the health care bill. He was the deciding vote in a majority decision which allowed the health care bill to stand based on the fact that the majority saw it as under Congress's ability to tax and regulate, that they can make a decision to bring people in under the health care legislation. It denied the other portion of the legislation under the Commerce Act, so it did not apply under the Commerce Act, whereby people the states could not be forced by the federal government to carry the share of increases in Medicare, which will come into play under this bill as it comes into effect little by little. So let's get right to the question. Deadpan, why did John Roberts vote the way he did on the bill? Hold on. In TV, this is known as, hold it right there. Hold that thought. Basil BuddhaCat Presents, may we help you? Do you have a question? Oh. The caller says that he is actually Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, and he's watching us via satellite from an undisclosed location. We know he's in Europe for the week, but he's actually found out from the neighbor who is supposed to be taking care of Basil's guest, Deadpan. One of the neighbor kids, Willie Culpepper. Did you know that Willie would discover you were missing, Deadpan? Apparently he didn't think about that. Okay, Chief Justice Roberts, what do you have to add to the conversation? We're just about getting ready for Deadpan to weigh in on why you voted as you did on the legislation, which goes by the name of the Affordable Care Act, and most folks know by the title Obamacare. Okay, Justice Roberts says he does not want you to divulge anything that you learned within the privacy of the home. He does not want you to discuss that. Justice Roberts, I'm afraid that Basil, the host of the show, is flicking you the middle claw. Okay? His voice is going up just a tiny bit. He's very insistent that he doesn't want us to discuss this because he thinks that you should not be talking about something which you heard. Now we know that under American law, wives may not be forced to testify against their husbands, but certainly may testify against their husbands. And I think it's safe to say that he hung up. He said he was going to consult his law journal. Okay, Deadpan, tell us, why did your human, Chief Justice John Roberts, vote the way he did on the health care bill? Okay? Okay, now, Deadpan is telling Basil, and Basil's translating for me. Okay? Deadpan's saying that Chief Justice Roberts voted the way he did out of concern that if Americans could not be forced or told by Congress that they had to buy health insurance, they had to buy into health insurance for themselves, that he worried that it would be very possible that you would find lawsuits evolving out of that, where people would be claiming that the federal government, Congress, that no one could tell them that they had to pay into the Social Security system, and they could opt out of that by the same reasoning that they could opt out of any mandatory health care coverage. Okay? Furthermore, hold on. Yeah, furthermore, there's more to it. Okay, go ahead. Hold on. Basil BuddhaCat Presents. It's Chief Justice Roberts again. His voice has ticked up a couple of decibels, it appears. Deadpan, I'm just going to have to tell you that Chief Justice Roberts, right this minute, is beginning to file a brief suing you for divulging information that you're obliged to keep in privacy. He's coming back a day early to America from Europe, and he's going to file a lawsuit against you. First of all, he says he's going to have you brought home in chains inside a cat case, inside a bag, inside an unsealed cargo holder on a jet. Justice Roberts, I'm afraid that your own cat is right now flicking his ear, tweaking his mustache, and flicking you the middle claw. I'm just telling you. Okay, he slammed the phone down that time. Okay, Deadpan, there's more to it, isn't there? You told us the audience that there's more to it than just the fact that Americans would begin to sue to opt out of Social Security if they could not be forced into buying into mandatory health care, that they would sue on those grounds that they could not be forced to participate in Social Security and Medicare and have that deducted from their paychecks. Or for those that are self-employed, like myself, we pay as the employer and the employee our fair share of Social Security, up to a threshold I think it's about $105,000 is the threshold. After $105,000 income, the wealthiest among us are not required to pay any more into Social Security, which in fact came into being in the 1980s and is okay. Yeah. He's not speaking for Justice Roberts right now. He's not speaking for his human, Chief Justice Roberts. But Deadpan says, as far as he's concerned, that if everyone paid a percentage, and even perhaps even a smaller percentage of the of their income into Social Security and Medicare, and paid up to their full income, that's to say beyond that $105,000 threshold, so a millionaire, someone with $1 million after-tax income a year would pay it on their income up to the max. Then Medicare and Social Security would be solvent into the foreseeable future. That there would be no 20 years or 30 years down the road that Medicare would be in a situation where it was paying out more than it was taking in. Okay, and I just want to make it sure he's emphasizing this with a very loud that's his opinion, and he's never heard Chief Justice Roberts speak or opine or sing to the shower to himself about this matter. Okay, here we go. Okay, now you said that there was something else that would be problematic in the words of your human, Chief Justice John Roberts. And what was that? Okay, he's saying that Chief Justice Roberts also worried that people would say that if the government cannot force them to participate in a health care program and buy health insurance, if they weren't given it through their employer, and if they weren't made to contribute to Social Security and Medicare as a consequence of that, then people would sue claiming that they should not and could not be forced to buy auto insurance for their cars. That they should be able to take their chances, and accident occurs, they're at fault, that they would just have to say to people, hey, sue me, which apparently they do anyway. But certainly that would allow someone who didn't have any ability to be sued, have no money to be sued for, have nothing to be taken from them, would be able to drive around willy-nilly. And those are, that's Basil's words, actually. Basil likes the term willy-nilly. They could drive around not worrying about what happens, because the worst that could happen is they could get in an accident, it could be their fault, and they'd be flicking the other driver and the police and hospitals that were taking care of the injured in the accident. They could be flicking them the middle claw. Only if cats were driving, but I don't think that's going to... Well, maybe cats could sue to drive. You never know what could come of this whole thing. But at any rate, so that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I think that's pretty intriguing. Okay, another call in. Hello, Basil BuddhaCat Presents. Oh. Deadpan and Basil. It's Willie Culpepper. Willie's the young neighbor boy who's supposed to be taking care of Deadpan while Chief Justice Roberts is in Europe. Okay. Willie's saying that he got a very loud and aggressive phone call a moment ago from Chief Justice Roberts, and he feels it's necessary to add into the conversation that even though he's never been anywhere near Chief Justice John Roberts' shower, or in fact most of the rooms of his house, he knows for a fact that Chief Justice Roberts never told anyone never told anyone why he voted the way he did. It's between John Roberts and some things he probably said to his fellow Supreme Court justices in the process of the discussion on the matter. But Willie Culpepper is saying that never said such a thing. Okay, I have to tell you, Willie, that Deadpan's got a very quizzical smile on his face, and I think if you know Deadpan, you know he's probably something a little bit above and beyond his typical Deadpan expression. Okay. Anyway, okay, let's see if we can get some more calls. And in the meanwhile, what do you have to say about this, Basil? Does it make sense to you? Okay. Basil says actually he was using Willie. Oh, I'm sorry. No, not Willie. Deadpan. Using Deadpan as an unnamed source when Basil blogged in the New York Times last week, and actually, you did. It was a name source, not an unnamed source. Basil says, and you could actually Google Basil BuddhaCat and some of the periodicals that he, some of the internet locations that he blogs on. One being the Washington Post, occasionally on the New York Times, but he doesn't like the New York Times so much anymore since it actually costs money to read articles in the New York Times after an allotment of I think it's 10 or 20 a month that you get free from the Times, and after that you have to actually subscribe. But he blogs on the Washington Post. He blogs also on a couple of little internet right-wing rags, one being Newsmax, which is a fairly well-known one, and the other one being Conservative Byte, and that's B-Y-T-E. Oh, hold on one second. Wasn't expecting any calls in on this phone today. Hold on. Yes, Basil BuddhaCat Presents. Who's calling on this line today? Oh. It's Sarah Palin. She's got a little something to add to this discussion. She says, the next time Rick Perry goes walking with his dog on their familiar route, Rick carrying his shooting iron. That's a pretty good pronunciation there, Governor Palin. Yeah, carrying a shooting iron, that there'll be a new target. That sounds a little bit, that sounds a little threatening in tone, former Governor Palin. She says, no, of course not. Of course not. She wasn't actually. That was quite an odd sound that she was making there for a moment. Maybe she's learning to speak coyote. She says actually, she was referring to former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney will be hung out to dry, so to speak, so Governor Perry can take a couple of shots at his carcass. Okay. Now, she wants me to add that, of course, the audience knows she's being facetious because she would never have a violent thought in her mind. And, okay. Basil says, tell that to the wolves that you've shot from helicopters and planes. Hello? Oh, okay. Okay, we lost her. Okay. That's interesting at any rate. But, so let me ask you a follow-up question to your remarks, Deadpan. And Basil is telling me a little what he wants me to ask, so the audience can hear, and perhaps even we'll get some call-ins and some participation on this important issue. Why in the world did Chief Justice John Roberts wait till this moment in time to break ranks with the other folks that are generally side with him? Justice Antonin Scalia, Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Anthony Kennedy. And we'll call him the other guy. Oh, okay. Sam Alito. Deadpan says he's not sure. He says he's been in on a lot of conversations in person and close enough that via telephone he could hear the gist of what was said from both sides. He's been in a lot of conversations, heard a lot of things said by those five justices in conversations they've had with one another, and he's just not sure why Justice John Roberts has never broken ranks with his right-wing compadres up until this point. Okay, well, that's a fair answer. Basil, you want to follow up with anything on that? Basil's ears. Oh, well, he's got the microphone on his ear, so that's why that. He says it doesn't bother him, though. He says he does his Pilates and he does all his exercises so that his ear is holding up pretty well and able to carry that extra weight. No problemo. Okay? Okay, well, at that, we're going to have to wrap up this show unless anybody's got something else to add. Okay, we have time for one more call. Hold on. Basil BuddhaCat Presents. Okay. It's Rick Perry. Okay. Governor Perry, we're going to have to take your call on our Sunday morning show. So what we'll do is we'll give you a call Sunday morning if Basil feels it's appropriate. And from there, we're going to have to wrap it up. This has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's co-host, chief interpreter, and gopher. Basil BuddhaCat, center slot, and Deadpan, John Roberts, HouseCat. Thanks. Enjoy your evening. We'll see you Sunday morning. They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Meow.